This car looks just as good now as it did back in 1962, 63.
And they should go back to that today.
I don't know that that would work.
Hello, I am Craig Cole, and I've worked in automotive media for nearly 20 years, and this right here is Jason White. He's a real-life car designer and a professor at the College for Creative Studies in Detroit, and this right here is the vehicle we will be talking about next. With this series, we're taking a detailed look at the styling of significant, or perhaps in some instances, insignificant vehicles. Now, keeping things interesting, Jason has no prior knowledge of the vehicle that we're going to be talking about in this episode. That way, his reactions are hopefully genuine. And Jason, I'm going to slide this over to you to take a peek at in just a second, because first, I think this is one of the most beautiful cars ever built. I think it's a design icon. I think it's a legendary product. And I might be overselling this, but I absolutely love this thing.
Well, now if I don't like it, it's going to be a big, devastating moment for you.
It is going to be a devastating moment. But anyway, let's do the big reveal here. And make sure you like this video and please subscribe. I got to get the plug in. It's building suspense.
But you're like, let's have a look. But first.
Like and subscribe. That way we can bring you more videos like this one. But Jason, here's the design. Tell me what you think.
Survey says, oh my goodness. Yes, actually, I would agree with you. This is a very significant design. No question about it.
Yeah, it's the 1962 or 63 Lincoln Continental. I wanted to go big.
It's really hard to think of another car that's this stately and this modern and this clean, and actually also a luxury car that is aged as well as this one.
Right.
It still looks beautiful even now.
Yeah. If they brought that out today, I think they would.
Well, if you look at Lincoln show cars from the 2000s, they made several attempts at doing that in show vehicles, and they kind of hinted at it here and there with some of their work. But this is the genuine article. Like if you took Lincoln and put it in a crucible and burned away all impurities, you'd be left with a pure product. And this is that. Yeah. This is Lincoln as pure as you can possibly give. It's 101 proof Lincoln as far as the brand and its character.
It'll get you drunk on luxury.
Yeah, when you look at Lincoln throughout its history, there are a couple of Lincolns probably that set the bar for the best the brand has had to offer over the years. This Continental would definitely be on top of the list. A very close second would be maybe the Mark II Continental from 1956,
Something
I believe.
like that, yeah, a few years earlier.
But this vehicle in particular.
It's really like a less is more approach, right? They don't have unnecessary trim on the vehicle. It's just very clean. Very, I want to say simple. I don't know if that's true or not.
If you think about the kind of furniture and architecture that was being done at the time, and I'm talking about like leading edge stuff like Charles Eames and Mies van der Rohe and Le Corbusier, this car fits right in with that. The funny part is if you look at a Continental that's just prior to this one, it's very garish and very over the top. Yes. So going from that one to this one is actually quite a departure, but it is really a gorgeous car. The first thing I would point out, it's very substantial looking. It has very, very thick slabbed side the whole way through. There's not a lot of surface change here. It's very, very subtle. And if you look here, like at this particular detail where the chrome bumps up just a little tiny bit, it's just a very, very subtle detail. But everything about this car is subtle. There's just little tiny inflections here and there and proportional decisions that make the vehicle look well considered and expensive, like this little light catcher that's right here at the top of the wheelhouse.
What is a light catcher?
It just basically is a change in surface that will catch light normally from above. And it doesn't cost you anything to put this stuff in the car. It's just like if you want it there, you make it part of the stamping. But little subtle things like this communicate to the customer that it is a really well considered subtle vehicle. The other thing about this vehicle that really sets it apart is that it has suicide doors on the back here. And to your point about it being a beautiful car, the main thing I would think of with this car is that it's timeless. This car looks just as good now as it did back in 1962, 63. Yeah. There's not a lot about it that looks dated. Like you can see this car on the street and it would still look really beautiful today. There's fewer and fewer cars today that are being designed with that in mind. Like how is this going to age?
Well, we see that with modern Hyundai design. Every model they make is quite dramatically different. And I think a lot of the cars do look good right now, but in 10 or 15 years, I'm not convinced they will be all that attractive. Certainly not like this.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that really strikes me about this is what's not there. There's no surface, there's no like scoops in here or any stuff like that. It's very, very straightforward. And that is probably why it is as timeless as it is. It does not conform to styling trends of the time. The early 60s were a real transition point for design because the tail-finned era basically was done. Harley Earl had left General Motors design. It was handed over to Bill Mitchell. The guy who designed this car was Elwood Engel, a guy who worked at both Chrysler and Ford. He was responsible for the Chrysler turbine car as well.
And I was going to say he did the Imperials too, shortly after the Continental, which you can see a lot of the inspiration.
Yeah, he was an excellent designer and really ushered in this new, clean, restrained era of design.
So this is a 62 Continental, and the big giveaway, at least to me, is the grille. It's comprised of a series of small rectangles that sort of mimic the overall shape of the front end of the car. But if you go to 63, they changed that front end just a little bit, and it's more of an egg crate design. And I'm really split on which one I like better.
Well, to be honest, I mean, that's not what makes or breaks the design. It's really refreshing to see a design that is not defined by its grille, because we've walked down that path with everything that's built right now.
Yeah.
And to a degree, that can really limit what you can do, because if it's defined by that, then it's like, okay, everything else just has to key off of that. But this car is defined by the slab side that it has. The grille and any treatment you do in here is almost secondary to that. The thing that really identifies this car, and in fact, if we go back to this image right here, I mean, that's the car. The profile is the car.
Yeah.
You could do a dozen different things with the front and rear end, and it would still be the same car. It's not going to change the overall feel of the car. Like if you change a grille on most modern cars, do something different, it totally changes the way people look at it, because that's where most of the design is. But in this case, it doesn't really involve the front or rear end of the car. That's not what defines this design.
It's that profile.
It's the
those
profile.
slab sides.
And this is the perfect car to illustrate how important proportion is, because that is about 80% of design. The rest of it is details. But if you look at how this car is proportioned, like for example, there's a very generous dash to axle.
And what is that exactly for people that don't know?
Dash to axle is the space between the front axle and the firewall of the car, or the windshield would be another way of looking at it visually. But if you have a large amount of space here, or a generous amount of space, it immediately suggests to the viewer that the vehicle has a lot of power under the hood. There are a lot of aesthetic tropes that we don't know we're programmed to react to, but it's a long-standing narrative that we've been seeing. If you look at cars over the years, we've been trained to react to cars in certain ways, and doing a long dash axle is one way you can convey that the car has a lot of power under the hood without putting a number on the side of the car.
A V12 badge.
It's
fake
more
vents.
And that's just a proportional device. Another thing that this car does that's really good, if you look at the rear pillar, or the D pillar as it's called in the business. Actually, this would be a C pillar because they name them as they go backwards. A, B, C. So this is the C pillar right here. But look at how it runs right into where the rear wheelhouse is.
I've never noticed that.
If that were not over the rear wheelhouse, the sense of strength that the vehicle is, it looks like a bank vault in a lot of ways. And that would not work if it was not aiming right at one of the big, important parts of the design of the rear wheel. The other thing is just any small detail is very small and very subtle. We talked about this little kick up right here in the chrome. That's the only real inflection that happens from front to back. Now, you could look at this design and say to yourself, well, this looks relatively easy to design. Believe me, the simpler the design is, the harder it is to get right. It's not the other way around, because it's all in the subtlety. And if you don't have a knack for subtlety as a designer, this is not something you should be working on. Like, look at these little subtle lips along the wheelhouses right here. That little detail is really beautiful. The chrome that runs the whole length of the vehicle. There's even a little tiny chrome bead that runs along the inside of the wheelhouse.
Chrome.
It's really small. That's another thing. Where the chrome is applied here, it's done very minimally and very tastefully. It's not slathered all over the place like late 50s or anything like that.
Or the preceding Continental even, which was a much larger car and very, I wouldn't say gaudy, but certainly more adventurous.
It's garish by comparison to this. But that just reflects the changing attitudes of not only the designers but also people who are buying these cars. I mean, the whole tail fin era was basically gone by then. You wouldn't see this on the back
Yeah.
of the car. But basically, that wave had crested and fallen back.
Thankfully.
Well, they'd done everything they could do with it, and then people were thinking, okay, this is getting a bit ridiculous. And the designers thankfully went in a more restrained way, less influenced by jets and more. The cars take on more of almost an animal quality about them, haunches and proportions where that's concerned. So.
While we've got it in profile here,
Yeah.
suicide doors, yay or nay? I would love to see suicide doors because they're unique.
Enter into luxury through Continental Doors, the only doors on an American car that open not here, but here. In the center, the grand entrance to spacious comfort. Continental comfort.
The problem with a suicide door like this is that you have a B pillar that's in here to catch that. And that is kind of defeating the purpose of suicide doors, because if you have them opening like that, the implication is that you have a wider berth to get into the car, and it makes things easier. But if you have a B pillar there, that's not...
Still an impediment.
It's still an impediment.
Yeah.
It doesn't really change anything. They're a very elegant solution, and it's nice that the two handles come together here. It's very nice and clean. Is it functionally better? That's debatable. It depends.
But it's so cool.
But
I
it's
love
cool.
it.
Yeah. But it's not a door choice that's going to cause you to have any huge engineering problems or like leaks or anything like that.
They could do that today.
They could.
They just choose
and
not
actually,
to.
they did do it for a small portion of them.
A small limited run of the Continental.
Which is not an easy thing to spend money on. I mean, the door architecture is the most. I mean, save the engine is probably the most expensive thing to develop in the car.
Because that whole body side aperture stamping, that's difficult and expensive.
You're dealing with a lot of different planes at once, and you want it to strike the same striker every time, exactly the same, to within millimeters, and getting it to do that is really hard to do. It just makes me amazed that they would do a separate architecture just simply to do suicide doors for the heck of it.
Let's jump to another photo I want to ask you about. This is a 63, as you could tell by the license plate. But the Continentals have this very unique sort of like trough that runs along the side, which almost looks like a gutter. What is the purpose of that, and why is it there?
I don't really know that there's a purpose to it. Actually, now that I'm looking at it, it could pose a problem.
Yeah.
It could catch dirt and rainwater in there very easily. I mean, you would like to think that it would run off, but this trough, as you call it, is not going one way or the other. It's just dead flat. So I would think that that'd be an area where you'd actually catch some dirt. It might be a tough spot to keep clean. I think the thing that they're really after here is like establishing this line with chrome the whole way along the length of the vehicle. That's the most important thing.
And what does that do? Does it tie the car together?
Yeah,
does it elongate it? What?
It ties the car together. It keeps it. It gives great continuity from start to finish, and that is the way a lot of people read a car. They're looking at it from one end to the other. And as a designer, one of the things you're trying to do, it's almost like you're waving a baton. You're trying to get someone to look at a car, like have their eyes scan a car and pick up certain things. Especially because you got to remember, this is not just simply an item that is sitting still and static all the time. It's moving.
It's moving.
So styling, by and large, modern automotive styling takes into account that this object is moving. And so when that's the case, your eye is going to go from one end to the other usually. So that is how they approach this. And they want it to just look very clean, very solid, and everything they did reinforces that. If I were to give this car a letter grade, I would say I'd give it an A. Because,
That's a good answer. I agree.
Because it accomplishes what it wanted to at the time. It ushered in a new era of styling for the brand that everybody seemed to like. And it is a timeless design. It still looks good.
And they should go back to that today.
I don't know that would work.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why.
Agree to disagree. No.
Well, the reason why is because there are so many marks in the marketplace right now, so many different brands. Doing brand recognition on the basis of subtlety, I think, is a dangerous game to play in this marketplace. And I say this marketplace because everybody's doing very extravagant stuff. And I would be concerned if I went with a very subtle design that it would just get swallowed up by all the white noise of everything else.
So that might be a reason why we're not seeing these super clean, elegant designs today.
Well, the truth of the matter is not everybody is driven by clean design. It's
This is true.
One thing that I've always, I've heard it said before about writing, don't write for other writers,
Yeah.
And I've always been of the opinion that you shouldn't design for other designers. And that's a mistake that happens a lot in the business. Designers will fall in love with some specific thing, like BMW right now has that one grille that came off that a design from the 70s, and they want to put it on everything.
Yeah.
but only they are the ones who really understand the lineage there.
And the layperson, the lay driver, they
don't see it. So if you're not careful, you can very easily go down that rabbit hole. And you lose the audience very quickly. So that's the other reason I think that it probably is best to look forward, not backward necessarily.
Gotcha. Alrighty, Jason, I think that'll just about do it for this episode of the show, but thank you so much for your time, and where can people find your work beyond, say, the College for Creative Studies in Detroit?
Okay, now, Craig, I know you're not a racing fan.
You know that very well.
But I've worked over the years with some people in Europe, good friends of mine, developing open source sim racing mods, and we have our own league on the web called the International Simracing Organization. And next to that league, like even if you don't like to drive sims, we have a lot of interviews with some very interesting former drivers. Some just off the top of my head, Arie Luyendyk, Mario Andretti, Derek Daly, and Stefan Johansson, and those are very interesting podcasts in and of themselves. But if you go to International Simracing Organization and go to our forum, you'll find a way to get to our Instagram, to our Facebook, to our YouTube channel,
of the socials.
Everything's there. But definitely check it out because we try really hard to celebrate the history of the sport of auto racing, and I think you'll find some interesting stuff there.
Fascinating. In addition to design-focused content like this, we've got a whole bunch of footage shot of my 1936 Ford V8 sedan, so we're going to bring you more videos on my car in the future. So in the meantime, make sure you like this video and subscribe. And again, thank you so much.
Thanks.